بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كل وليك الحجة الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل الساعة وليا وحافظا وحافظا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين سوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted all of your great deeds and a'mal, especially every step that you have taken on the pathway for commemoration, for mournings and azadari for the sake of Sayyid Shoda alayhi salatu wassalam and his beautiful caravan and ashab and companions, with the hope that inshallah every single one of us will gain the bounty and the tawfiq for going for his ziyarah to say aloud salawat. And inshallah, before we get started, we can remember all the marhamina, marhamat, especially from the group, from the household, from those who have sponsored the program, and all of the shahada, newly shahada, and the shaheed al-manzur, inshallah, within your prayers, where you say your loudest of salawat, followed by Surah Al-Fatiha. As we get closer and closer to the day of Ashura, the day of the maximum amount of pain and suffering and sorrow and grief upon the heart of our Imam Hussain, inshallah we can help to ease the pain and inshallah the suffering by reciting our most sincere and loudest of salawat in the honor of Hazrat Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman, Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajah al-Sharif. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We are thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this bounty and blessing to be able to gain this barakah, this tawfiq, this chance, this divine chance to be able to get together within what we refer to as a house majlis. Inshallah, I want to talk about merely about the very same concept in which perhaps to a lot of us is a given fact, and we may take it for granted. Hopefully that we will not be taking it for granted and understand the whole wisdom, the whole barakah, the whole blessings, and all of the virtues and fazail behind this very simple gathering that we tend to practice within our culture. So one part of it is the culture aspect. We've been raised in this way that when Muharram comes, we have the majalises in the houses, right? From one house to another house, sometimes we go about 2, 3, 4, 5 majalises per day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from all of you, and inshallah will grant all of us to gain what is truly served within the majalis of Hussaini, inshallah. Now, to take one step back before this, number one, why do we do this? Does it have any religious background? And two, what are the benefits and how me, as a participant of the majalis of Imam Hussain, how can I make sure I maximize the amount of blessings that I can gain from the majalis? So this is inshallah what I'm going to talk about briefly. I'm not going to take much of your time, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Holy Book of the Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له فيها بالغدو والآصال. In houses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed them to be raised and wherein His name is celebrated. He is glorified therein morning and evening. في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه. When we look at the commentary, when we look at the tafasir, the mufassirin, they focus on one word, izn. Izn, I think in Urdu and Farsi almost has a similar meaning as Arabic. Izn means permission. They say when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about specific houses, في بيوت, specific houses in which the izn is given, the permission is given. Izn of who? Izn of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The mufassirin, the commentary of the Quran, they say that this izn is not only permission in terms of being productive, but means all the boundaries in which it may prevent something from happening has been lifted. right? So it's not only from one aspect of being like productive. No, it basically means to remove every single boundary that may actually prevent an action from happening. So when izn comes, it means there's absolutely no way of stopping it in a layman term. Now, what is the izn referring to, and what type of houses, right? Is it particular houses? Is it only a few number of houses? Or no, is this like a concept in which it expands and it finds so many different applications? Again, there is a discussion between the commentators of the Quran. They talk about this. They say, number one, the condition of this izn and permission is what? In the houses in which the name, the remembrance, the zikrullah takes place. So it's directly tied with zikrullah, meaning that it's not like in normal houses. It's a particular type of house in which the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes the foundation in that house, right? And that's why they talk about now the application of it. What are the misdaq of it? So some of them, again, they go back to ahadith, they say this ayah refers to 4 particular houses. What are those 4 particular houses? The 4 of the great mosques, the 4 of the masajid. Number 1, Masjid al-Haram. Why? Because it contains the holy Kaaba within it, and it's the house in which Nabi Ibrahim has set up and built and rebuilt. Number 2, Masjid al-Haram in the city of Medina. Number 3, the Bayt al-Maqdis, where Nabi Sulaiman actually established that one. And 4th, Masjid al-Quba. Masjid al-Quba is the first masjid which was built in the history of Islam by the hands of Nabi Rasulullah, right? So these 4 mosques becomes the perfect example of this ayah, meaning only in these 4 places, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was mentioned and became publicly known as the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, it becomes the example of this ayah. Then they went up to Nabi Rasulullah and they asked the same question. Is it only these 4 or no? Nabi Rasulullah turns around and says, no, it's not only the 4, but actually it's the houses of all of the Anbiya. Because literally speaking, every house of each of the Nabi, each of the Prophet, each of the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the main concept of that house was to form in an objective of remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the responsibility of the Anbiya. That's why they've been selected and they've been sent to us. The primary message is to go back and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your course of direction will become valid, will become Sirat al-Mustaqim, right? Then they ask again, is there anywhere else beside the house of the Anbiya? Nabi Rasulullah says, yes, there is this general concept about these houses in which the izn, the permission has come out to, but it goes in level of to what extent this remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes place. Right there, one of the companions stand up and starts asking this follow-up question. Can you give us a particular example of what are some of the houses in which the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned? So Nabi Rasulullah is talking about the concept. The second companion stands up and says, فَقَالَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ مِنْهَا وَأَشَارَ إِلَى بَيْتِ عَلِيٍّ وَفَاطِمَةٍ. The second companion stands up, he's a very famous companion, and he's asking the follow-up question again. O Nabi Rasulullah, is this house part of this buyutan azanallah fi turfa asma? Is this house part of these houses in which Allah mentions in the Quran? And he's pointing at the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyida Fatima al-Zahra sallallahu alayha wa in which Nabi Rasulullah responds, Na'am alayhi min afdalha. Yes, indeed, this house not only is part of them, not only included within the description, but it's among the best of it, min afdalha. So if you want to go according to the level and degree, this house becomes among the best of the houses. Then a follow-up hadith by our beloved Imam Hussain A.S. He says, إِنَّهُ مَنْ أَتَى الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا اهْتَدَى وَمَنْ أَخَذَ فِي غَيْرِهَا سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا رَدًى. Imam gives an example. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about buyut, houses in this ayah. This is number 1, the house, every house that you can possibly imagine has an entrance, has a door, has a gateway, has a bab, right? The proper way of entering a house is through its door. It's not through the window, it's not through the backyard, it's not through the roof, right? And Imam says, whoever goes any other way except through its proper entrance, he or she will end up destroying or destructing themselves. Right? So he continues and he says, في غيرها سلك طريق الردى وصلى الله طاعته ولي أمره بطاعة رسوله. Then Imam says, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about the houses in which the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned? Remember the doorway? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has connected His obedience to the obedience of His messenger, and the obedience of His messenger to the obedience of the ulul amr, the obedience of those who have been vested with authority. So whoever goes according to the obedience of the ulul amr has obeyed Nabi Rasulullah, and those who obey Nabi Rasulullah have obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, Imam is referring to the ayah, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasul wa ulil amri minkum, making this parallel for us that the reason that Allah talks about these houses as being the houses in which the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned, has been given permission to mention, because Allah has tied these houses to what? To this chain of command, if you want to say. That if I want to obey the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have to obey Nabi Rasulullah. And if I want to obey the commands and the teachings of Nabi Rasulullah, I have to obey the commands and the teachings of those who are the closest to Nabi Rasulullah, who have the qualities in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to them as ulul amr. And Imam Sadiq continues and he says, so that's why this concept of these houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not be limited to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 examples. Rather, it becomes vast, it becomes expanded. So for me and you, this gives that opportunity. That is not only a cultural thing, number one, that we have house majalises, but also from the religious aspect, it gives us the proof that whichever house in which the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes place. Now, living in the West on the weekend, what do usually people do? Right? When you go around, a lot of people, they get together. So this formation within the house of one another is not a new thing. But for what reason? For what purpose? And why do we get together? Right? So one simple comparison between the two, the intention, it actually shows how much of the barakat and blessings and fadail and virtues and actually mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets brought to the community, to the neighborhood, just by upholding the majalis of Ahlul Bayt, or the majalis in which the Quran is recited. As Imam Hussain A.S. talks about this, in which he says, Al-Bayt alladhi yuqra'u fihi al-Quran. Number one, the house in which, within that house, yuqra'u fihi al-Quran. The Quran, the Holy Quran is being recited, right? The Quran being recited doesn't mean only the small surahs. Doesn't mean Surah Nas, Surah Falaq, the last 4 or 5 surahs of the Quran which we all memorize. That's good, but no, Quran recitation means to make it part of our lifestyle. Right? Each day, allocate a portion of our time to recitation of the Quran. And recitation doesn't only mean just to pick up the Quran and read it as fast as we can so I can get to my next plan for the day. No, recitation means with tadabbur, right? With that contemplation and reflection. As our Imam Raza, our 8th Imam A.S. says, that every ayah of the Quran that I read or recite, I think about it, how it was revealed, what was the story of revelation, 2, what message does it have for me, what is it asking from me, right? We say Quran is the book of guidance, but how many of us will actually look at the Quran as the book of guidance? Or we just look at it as tabarruk, right? We kiss it, we put it on our eyes, and we put it in the highest place out of respect. But we keep it at the highest place for the entire year, unless if it's a night of bad. Then what do? We bring it down, we wipe out the dust, and then we place it over our head. And when we do, the majalis, then what do again? We place it back again at the top of the shelf. It's supposed to function as a book of guidance, but if I'm not reading it, how am I going to guide it? Do we look at the miraculous way of Quran, coming to a dream and showing itself as a form of a human being, and say, okay, do this and do that, and inshallah you become a millionaire in your life? Is that what we expect? No, it's a book of guidance. We have to spend time with it. We have to spend time with it in the way of try to understand at least one ayah per month. It doesn't have to be a very a very busy schedule. One ayah per month, that is going to change the course of our lives within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, to the point that gradually our lifestyle becomes an Quranic lifestyle. And that's what the Ahlul Bayt are talking about. Like when they make a reasoning, their reasoning doesn't go against the Quran. Every time they have a teaching, every hadith that you read one way or another, when you go back in the roots of it, it goes back and it reflects on one of the ayahs of the Quran. And that's why we say the thaqalain, right? The narrations of the two weighty thing. That these two weighty things, they will never separate one another, right? And the hadith is very interesting. It says like, not like for example, maybe these two are together and then eventually or one day they will not separate from another. No, it says the possibility of these two weighty things separating from one another is impossible. It removes the possibility from it, right? Why? Because it comes with the land. Land is like, we call it nafi abad. Nafi abad means like, it's like literally impossible. So Quran and Ahlul Bayt will never separate one another, not in form of actuality, but even in the form of possibility. So if that's the case, number one, we have to spend some time on the Quran. وَيَذْكَرُ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِيهِ تَكْثُرْ بَرَكَةً وَتَحْضُرُ الْمَلَائِكَةَ. Then the Imam continues. It says, in the houses in which Quran has been recited and the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned. What are the results? What are the outcomes? And تَكْثُرُ barakatuh. Number one, the barakat, the blessings, becomes more. It becomes kathir, right? In terms of the numbers, quantity, and quality. وَتَحْضُرُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. And the angels starts appearing within that household. وَتَحْجُرُهُ الشَّيَاطِينَ. When the angels come, who leaves the house? Right? When the angels come in, the shayateen will leave the house, right? وَيُضِيءُ لِأَهْلِ السَّمَاءِ كَمَا تُضِيءُ الْكَوَاكِبُ لِأَهْلِ الْأَعْرَضِ. In California, I'm in Dallas, in California, some of the roads that you take, it's very like, mountainous road. You go on the top of the hills, and when you come down, you see pretty much a good portion of the city. So at nighttime, when you go for a drive, when you're coming down from the hill, you see all of the city with all of the lights. It's one of the sceneries that a lot of people, a lot of young ones, not like old ones like me, but they go for that scenery and they want to take a picture at that moment they're driving. Don't try it because you have to
outside garage door.
Right? But when you're looking down, you see all of these lights blooming or glowing themselves. So Imam Hussain says the houses in which the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ayahs of the Quran is being recited, it shines just like how the stars shine for the people of the earth. They shine for the angels of the sky. So they look down and they see that scenery, but in the houses in which the name and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned. So that's why ulama say that, we not only we have to recite the Quran, but we have to recite it out loud. Can we just put it on a autoplay from our, let's say, cell phone, from our laptop, from the audio system we have? We say that's, something, but the actual barakah is when you have a live person reciting it. Now, it doesn't have to be the best, let's say, voice or something, according to our own level, but getting the habit of recitation of the Quran within our houses and out loud. Or, for example, recitation of the azan with a loud voice, right? These are the stuff that actually brings those barakat to the house. وَإِنَّ الْبَيْتَ الَّذِي لَا يُقْرَأُ فِيهِ الْقُرْآنُ وَلَا يُذْكَرُ اللَّهَ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِيهِ تَقِلُّ بَرَكَةً وَتَحْجُرُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَتَحْضُرُهُ الشَّيَاطِينُ. Exact opposite. The houses in which Quran is not recited, the dhikrullah doesn't take place. What happens? قَلِيلُ الْبَرَكَةِ. The barakah becomes less. Right? What is barakah? Barakah is a very interesting concept. We have to consider. Sometimes we make comparisons like, okay, if that's the case, the house of Muslims should be a lot better than the house of those who do not believe in any form of, let's say, spirituality. But that's not the definition of barakah. Barakah means when you get a chance to actually be able to make the best out of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you. A lot of people have so many resources, but they themselves will never get a chance to actually use it for themselves, let alone helping others. Right? Look at the world. You see so many successful, technically, whatever, according to the general term of the success, people who have so many, let's say, connections, so many power, so many, fame, so many, a great vast of a network of connections. Yet again, what do they end up doing with what Allah has given to them? Act of oppression. They keep on killing so many innocent women and children. Right? So it's not only a matter of having so much, it's a matter of how I can spend what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to me. And that's the form of the barakah, right? So Imam says the houses in which the ayahs of the Quran has not been recited, 2, the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not been mentioned, that house, gets deduction within the barakat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Angels will leave the house. Instead, shayateen will come in. Shayateen will come in. So what happens? What's the effect of shayateen on the people of that house? Right? Within their minds, within their vision, within their objectives. And then sooner or later we see, wow, the entire family changed. So one of the root causes that we want to prevent this change, a bad type of change, is to make sure to go back and make sure we make this, or implement this as part of our lifestyle, inshallah. And then the third, what do you call it, the statement, inshallah, will help us about this house majalis, is the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt. Because we say it's not only the Quran, but also the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt. The way they live their life becomes reason for me and you. Why? Same ayah that I recited at the beginning of the Majlis. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنكُمْ. Right? This ayah by itself is enough for me and you to find out which way is the path and what is the correct path and what is the only path if I want the truth, felicity, if I want that prosperity. Right? Because Allah says, أَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ, obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then immediately with the waw, we say, right? It says, وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ. And obey Nabi Rasulullah, meaning Allah has brought the status of the commands of Nabi Rasulullah the same level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning just like how we obey or we want to obey the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's how we're supposed to go about obeying the commands or teachings of Nabi Rasulullah. Is that it? No, continues. What would it come? Right? This waw makes a big role in this. How is this translated? So is it the same status or no? Is it like, alongside of one another? Mufassirin, they talk about it and say no, because it starts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it continues and says that those who are vested with authority, so it brings them at the same status. The very same look that I have, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, this is obligated on me, the same concept is applied to walil amr, right? So that's why we go to the seerah of the Ahlul Bayt. We go and we look at their lifestyle and we see, okay, did they have house majalises? The answer is yes. Since when? We can argue that even before the time, the tragedy of Ashura, right? When Nabi Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam starts to narrate the story of Ashura, and he starts to mourn for the sake of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Not only that, when Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he's been recorded in at least two different chains of narrations. Some scholars say he talks about two different timing, but some say it's the same timing but narrated from two different people. One says coming back from Safin, someone says going to the Safin. When when they're going through the land of Karbala, Amir al-Mu'mineen narrates the story of Ashura, and he actually points out to places in which the khaymigah will be set up, all the luggages will be left, and he points out to the mazbahu atfal, to where the killing and the massacre takes place. Furthermore, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra, furthermore, Imam Hussain A.S, on the very last days of his life when Imam Hussain goes to visit him, he narrates the story of Ashura for Allah. He says, Hussain Jan, you don't have to cry for me, you have to cry for yourself on that day. Furthermore, after the tragedy of Ashura, the very first thing that Imam Sajjad does when the caravan returns back to Medina, it's very interesting. Imam Sajjad, he himself doesn't become or dress up as a mourner. He actually dress up as a servant. In what form? He tries to set up the majalis, and he himself personally starts serving so that the women of the Ahlul Bayt, they can get together and they can properly mourn and do azadari for the sake of Sayyid al-Shuhada. If that's not enough, Imam al-Baqir, he actually starts paying other people and says, even after my death, continue this tradition of having this majalis for the sake of Sayyid al-Shuhada. Imam al-Sadiq, he actually becomes sick, he pays someone and says, when you go to the land of Karbala, when you have your majlis, pray for my shifa. Imam al-Ma'soom being alive, by paying someone to go on his behalf for the ziyarah, so that he can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the shifa. So these are all indications that this house majalis is not only a cultural thing. No, literally speaking, the house majlis, the intention of it, right, by itself becomes a form of ibadah, becomes a form of worshiping. That's why we have to be very careful about the etiquettes of this majalis. Don't look at it, oh, it's just another social gathering. I'm just going to see a few brothers and a few sisters. No. This house majalises get formed, as we say, by invitation. Remember the ayah? Fi buyutan adana Allah. Within the houses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this permission. Which is why they say, even attending a majlis is not something that we can plan for. I'm sure everybody has tested this one way or another. A lot of times we before the month of Muharram, we have this list of all of the majalis that we're going to go. But by the 10th of Ashura, when we look back, it's oh, so many of them I missed. And not intentionally, but something happened. And they say every majlis, every moment that is spent on the pathway of, remembering Allah Abbas Naqvi comes with invitation. It's not something we can try to, clinch it. No, it comes with invitation. Something or somehow becomes that bounty, that tawfiq. Not everybody can attend the majalis of Sayyid al-Shahada. So many people were living next to the haram of Sayyid al-Shahada, didn't have a chance to get to know about Imam Hussain, right? One of the famous stories is actually one of the scholars who had to walk to the city of Najaf every day to attend the classes. He had a neighbor. The neighbor was one of the military personnel at the time of Saddam, and he was from a specific group. So he didn't believe, in the vilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and definitely he did not believe, in what happened in Ashura as a form of an oppression. So maybe something happened historically. I don't know. I won't make any comments about it. But every time he would see the scholar, he would make fun of him. Like, oh, are you going back to your mullah? And he keeps on making a different expression. You're going to go there to cry. You're going to go there to beat your chest, right? Every time. So the scholar was out of being patient, he wouldn't say anything. Every morning he would pass by his house. The guy would make remarks, and then but the alim would continue on his pathway. One day it was one of those bad days. So the scholar already had enough from the house or whatever has happened. He comes out to go for his classes and he's already angry. As he walks out, the neighbor comes out again and keeps on saying the very same things. Oh, are you going back to your mullah? Are you going to go cry to your mullah? Are you going to go beat your chest? And doing the same words. He becomes very angry. That day, instead of going to Najaf, he takes a cab, he goes to Karbala. He's fed up with it. He goes and he walks into the haram of Imam Hussain. He does a ziyarat. Still, he's feeling pretty burnt within. So he comes out. He goes to the haram of Hazrat Abbas. He goes there and he starts venting. He's like, oh, Hazrat Abbas, we know him as the honor of Bani Hashim. We know him as the loyal supporter of Abbas. Why don't you do anything about this guy? Every day that I go, every time that I come back, he's standing there. He's mocking me. Why don't you do something about it? And he burst us to tears that he couldn't hold it anymore, right? He falls asleep, he takes a nap. In the nap, he sees Bani Hashim. He approaches him. First he calms him down. He says, don't worry about him. We know his background, you don't know his background. He said, inform me please if you can. He said, this guy that comes to you every morning and every night as you go by his house and keeps on mocking you about your belief, the very same guy, X amount of years ago, he was walking by the Euphrates River, by the Shat al-Furat. He was walking alongside of the Furat River, and he was looking at the water flowing there freely. As he was looking at the water flowing there freely, he all of a sudden reminded himself of what took place in Muharram in Ashura. And he reminded himself that for 3 days they had blocked the passage and entrance to the water. As he reminds himself that, he contemplates for 1 second. He says no matter which way we go, it's not fair, it's not just for an army of 30,000 to block this amount of water upon 72 people of women and children. Just reminding himself of this story, he drops one drop of tear unintentionally. Let's say, oh, what they've done to the grandson of Nadeem, so the law was not right. For the sake of that one drop of tear unintentionally that he has shed on the pathway of the Shoda X amount of years ago, we've given him enough time and more time as long as he wants. because he has done something for us. If he has done something for us, we never let it go without an answer. And the Ahlul Bayt, ma'adan al-Rahman, right? The mines of mercy. It's not like we take one step, they come one step. No, we take one step, they come out as a fruit, right? So how much of the barakat it brings to the houses, right? Again, goes according to the level, and that's why they say it's by invitation. It's not something that I can, force myself into receiving it, inshallah. Now, what will be the objective of this majalis? There's a lot of different ways of getting the barakat. But one particular barakah that has been mentioned again by our imams is that as you guys get together, do a couple of things. Number one, ittaqullah wa kunu ikhwatan barara. First of all, be wary of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Have piety of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam is talking about when we get together, right? So what does it mean to have a piety of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we get together? You have to understand that this majalis, maybe in the Western culture, it would be a new thing, right? So part of this taqwa, part of this being very of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making sure that we pay the enough respect that is due when it comes to the local laws and policies, especially in the neighborhood. So each neighborhood is different. Some of the neighborhood has a particular policy, some of them have, it gets a new culture. So I have to make sure I provide enough information for all of those who are in my surroundings. One, two, I make sure I do not go beyond what are the promise or what are the expected policies of the neighborhood. Simple thing, for example, because we all get together, so many cars come to the house, right? Where do I park the car? Do I block in the driveway of the other houses? And imagine from their point of view, what do they see? All of these cars are coming in, mashallah, all of the cars, one luxurious than the other, alhamdulillah. But everybody's walking out of the car, everybody's wearing black, and it just gives that a moment of a fear perhaps or stress, what's going on? And if they want to search it even online, there's not enough good information about it. And some of the words, if they search, I think they're just going to have a lot more misunderstanding of what we're doing. So one of the part of this taqwa is to be able to provide information, right? Perhaps invite them, but invite them gradually. Don't invite them. I know one of the friends that he had invited a lot of his colleagues from college, and he had a good intention. But the day in which he invited them to the Majlis was on the day of Ashura. So when they came in, and obviously the member is half Arabic, half English, and it's all Matam, it's all crying. So they are Ashura, they are Muslim. And their eyes, they couldn't understand any of it. And they were just looking around like, what are people doing what they do, right? So being smart about it, being part of that mission of the Ahlul Bayt. What was the mission of the Ahlul Bayt? To spread the words, to spread the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, to spread the teachings of the Quran, but customizing it per local customs, right? So that becomes part of the taqwa of this majalis. Two, وَكُونُوا إِخْوَةً بَرَرًا. As we all get together, be this, to form this brotherhood in which is based on barara, based on a goodness. Not based on, which majlis gives a better nazr, which majlis gives a better, food, which majlis has a spicy food. No, based on barara. So that's why I say when it comes to the majalis, don't go by the name of the majlis, go for the sake of salvation. And a lot of times happens, you go to a place that you will not expect it, right? You go to that place and so many things changes in your life because that sincerity that ikhlas may be there. Vice versa, there could be so many majalises, they have so much of the name and the fame, maybe, I'm saying maybe, right? You go there, you come back, and you have a perfect timing, but that changes doesn't take place. So that's why they say don't, hand select. Try to go to whatever, whichever is closer to you, and try to attend various ones. Right? Because again, we try to make that brotherhood based on barara. متحابين في الله متواصلين متراحمين تزاوروا وتلاقوا. Not only based on goodness, but go and see one another in the form of getting connected to one another. Sometimes we come to the house majalises and everybody leaves as quickly as the majlis finishes. No, Imam Hussain A.S says when you go to the majlis, make sure you try to connect with one another after majlis. For what sake? For sake of be able to help one another. Right? This whole concept of brotherhood is formed based on providing services for the sake of one another. Just like, again, the school of thought of the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran. You know, a lot of times I may be thinking about myself, even the spiritual growth. Oh, I had a good moment, I had a spiritual high at the Majlis, alhamdulillah, and I go back. No. It's like, okay, if I have done that spiritual barakah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it to me, how can I share this with the community? How can I share this with the neighborhood? How can I share this with the household that I'm going in? Right? So these all becomes the pointers, inshallah, that we can participate, and hopefully we can combine as we participate in the majalis of the Ahlul Bayt. We hope and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this majlis from all of us, especially from the dear host and respected host, and inshallah have blessings upon their marhumin and marhumat, and inshallah provide shifa and cure for all of those who have come down with sicknesses, and inshallah grant all of us to form the majlis of Sayyid al-Shuhada, inshallah in the land of Karbala, in the haram of Sayyid al-Shuhada, while reciting the loud salawat. Few lines of masal, and inshallah I'll ask humbly all of you to keep myself and everybody within your du'as, especially all the mu'mineen and around the world who are facing oppressions and do not have a vocal voice. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah wa ala al-arwah allati yuhallat bifanaik alayka minni salam Allah أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى Let's go to the land of Karbala. Those who have gone, they know there's something unique about the shrine of Imam Hussain. It doesn't have 4 corners, it has 6 corners. They call it Shishkushe. Why? Because it contains the grave of at least 2 individuals, one Imam Hussain, and the one next to him, the grave of Hazrat Abdullah. The hope of Abu Abdullah, the jewel at the eyes of Abu Abdullah. See, each family, I'm sure if you guys are parents, if you have a family, if you have siblings, it's always you have the beloved ones within our families. And one of the primary bounty for each family is to see their beloved one grow up and become mature and become someone who can actually do so many or achieve so many achievements within their life. The more pious this person, this child be, the more of a value it has for the parents. As if like they see it as a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have a child who's like so pious, that as he grows up or she grows up, it becomes known for his or her piety. And they expect great return from that person. It's not the same, it's not a different story when it comes to the Ahlul Bayt, especially when it comes to the household of Abu Abdullah Hussain. Now imagine being raised in the house of Imam Hussain, being raised and being given the name of Ali Akbar, what type of personality and qualities and characteristics he would have. There's a famous story, one of the families in which they were living on the outskirts of Karbala, they could not, bear a child. So these 2, man and wife, because they didn't believe in the whole Ahlul Bayt and the story of Ashura and Imam Hussain, as a matter of the fact, they were on the opposite side. They would say, oh, this is a form of the shirt, so we have to make sure this doesn't spread around. So they had a bad intention. They make a nazar. They say, oh Allah, if you grant us a child, we will make sure we will raise him to the age in which he will become mature. Then we will train him with military tactics so that he can go and he can stop these people who go for the ziyarat of Imam Hussain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them a child. The child grows up, he reaches the age of 18, 19, he's a youth, he's a primary youth, he's been trained and he's been fed with all of this ideology. The mother tells him, go and sit out in an ambush, waiting for these groups that go towards Karbala. every one of them you see, you can attack them. Unless, otherwise, I will not have my contents for you. So the child goes, he finds an ambush place, puts on hideout, he's hiding behind like, a hill or something, and he's waiting for the first group of the Za'irin of Imam Hussain to pass by. He said, as I was waiting there, because I had walked for such a long time, I started feeling a little bit tired. So while I'm waiting, I took a nap. Let me take a nap for a short time, and then when I get up, then I have energy. He takes a nap. The nap goes a little bit longer than what he was expected. The first group comes by and passes from where he's hiding and goes to the land of Karbala. He stands up, he says, oh, he missed the first group. So he waits and waits for the second group. The second group is approaching from far distance. Again, he feels tired. So again, he falls asleep, he takes a nap. The second group goes by, the third group goes by, right? All of a sudden, within his nap, he sees himself in the day of Qiyamah, the day of resurrection. They call out his name. They pull him by the hair of his forefront, and they're dragging him towards the fire of the hell. As they keep on dragging him, he keeps on begging, oh Allah, I've done so many good things, I've done so many actions, and he keeps on trying to remind himself of all the good things that he has done, but the angels of wrath, they're pulling him and pulling him, pulling him, no mercy whatsoever. They take him to drop him within the fire of the hell. As they drop him down, they see the fire of the hell does not touch the body of this child. Angels have the questions. Oh Allah, you're going according to your command. He's worthy of being punished. We dropped him in the fire of hell. What happened? The fire is not touching him. The angels go to the superior angel, to the higher angel, to the archangels. One of the elite angels, he comes down and says there is a reason. Because he has something over his skin. What is it that he has over his skin? It says on the day in which he was on the hideout, on the ambush, to go out and kill the Za'irin of Imam Hussain, he falls asleep. When he falls asleep, the caravan of people walk by where he's hiding out. As they walk by, the dust goes up to the sky and then settles down once they pass through. The dust that was from the foot of all of the Za'irin of Imam Hussain has gone to the sky and has landed over his face and body. As long as that dust is there, the fire of hell will not touch him. If you want him to be punished, you have to take him and you have to do a proper ghusl and wash and then take him to the hell. But that dust of Abbas Hussain will not be able to be washed away. So this is one form of upbringing, but another form of upbringing, when Imam Hussain, on the day of Ashura, when Hazrat Ali Akbar comes up to him and he wants to ask for permission to go to the battlefield, the Maqatil says, among all of the Shohada, among all of the Ashab, among all of the Bani Hashim, the only one in which Imam Hussain did not hesitate even for a second to give permission was his beloved son, Hazrat Ali Akbar. The moment he went up to Abu Abdullah, as if they looked face to face, eye to eye, the moment he says, Halli min rukhsa, do I have permission, oh Baba Jan, to go to the battlefield? Imam Hussain immediately responds, says, yes, my son, go to the battlefield. But before you go, make sure you say one last time your farewell to the women of the Khaymegah and the tents. Let your aunties say their farewell to you as well. So some of the reports says Hazrat Ali Akbar goes back towards the tents of Abu Abdullah for one last time to say his farewell. This is where all the aunties and all the maharim, all of these little kids, they come and they circle around Hazrat Ali Akbar. Why? He has the most resemblance to Nabi Rasulullah, khulqan, khalqan, wa mantiqan. He has the most resemblance to Nabi Rasulullah, physical aspect, in terms of characteristics and morals, and even in the way of talking and reasoning. So all of these women and children, they come out. Sayyida Zainab, Sayyida Kulthum, Sayyida Sakina, Sayyida Rabab, all of them have come out, and they're looking at Hazrat Ali Akbar for one last time. They say, anyway, you don't have to go for the battlefield. He says, no, this is my duty, this is my responsibility.
One of these women says, if you have to go, do us one favor. At least walk in front of us for one last time, so it can remind us of how Nabi Rasulullah used to walk. Let us see you walking for one last time before you have to go to the battlefield. Maybe you can have rahmah, you can have mercy upon our ghurbatana. Irham ghurbatana. Have mercy upon us being strangers left in the land of Karbala. Hazrat Ali Akbar perhaps walks a little bit, takes on his spear and the swords on the horse towards the battlefield. The Maghtar says, as he passes by Abu Abdullah al-Hussain, Imam Hussain starts walking and following him behind, a step at a time. He holds on to his beard, looks at the sky. فَنَظَرَهُ نَظَرَةً آيَةً مِّنْهُ. Imam looks at Hazrat Ali Akbar and he looks at him in the look of someone who's desperate. He knows that in this going there is no return. He looks at the sky and says, oh Allah, bear witness, today I'm sending the youth towards this people who has the most resemblance to your Nabi Rasulullah in terms of a physical attribute, in terms of a moral attribute, in terms of the speeches and the statements and the reasoning. Oh Allah, bear witness. As Imam is looking at Hazrat Ali Akbar, he enters the battlefield. He fights. He has the blood of the Haydar in his blood. So he attacks the right side of the enemy. The enemy pushes back. He charges again the left side. They push back. He attacks the center of the army of the enemy. They all push back as if like no matter what Hazrat Ali Akbar does, there will not be a wound or something against his body. The Makhtar says, he makes a turnaround in the middle of the battlefield. There is something not wrong, not right here. He comes back towards Imam Hussain. One last farewell, one last look at the beautiful face of Abu Abdullah. Those who have gone to his ziyarah, they know. We don't see him. We go and we see a zari. But once you touch that zari, you never want to let go. Imagine in the middle of the battle of Karbala, on the day of Ashura, you're going back and you're seeing the face of beloved Imam Hussain. By who? By his son Hazrat Ali Akbar. He goes up, the two are facing one another. Hazrat Ali Akbar says, oh Baba Jan, is there any part of, any portion of water with you? The thirst is killing me, and the weight of this armor is bothering me. Any portion of the water that you may have somewhere within any of the tents. A lot of ulama, they say, we don't know why Hazrat Ali Akbar mentions water, because he knows that his father is even more thirstier than him. But he mentions, some they say maybe he was using it as an excuse to see one last time the face of Abu Abdullah, one last farewell before he can finally go back to the battlefield and sacrifice his life for the sake of Imam Hussain. He goes back towards the battlefield. Again, a fearsome battle takes place. He's killing so many to the point that they start surrounding him and they start attacking him from different angles. One of those Mal'unin comes from the blind side. He has a spear on his side and he legs it and actually pushes it towards the side of Hazrat Ali Akbar. As Hazrat Ali Akbar leans over because of the pain of his spear, one more person comes and he uses a metal club and grabs and strikes over the head of Hazrat Ali Akbar. The Maghtar says Hazrat Ali Akbar falls down on the horse, the blood gushing out from his forehead. It covers the eyes of the horse. The horse, instead of making a turn back towards the Khaymagah of Abu Abdullah, continues and speeds up towards the Khaymagah of Umar Asad. Now you can see what will happen. Who is watching? Imam Hussain. Whose body on the horse? Hazrat Ali Akbar. The horse is going among all of these enemy lines. The descriptions of the Maqtal, the saints and the swords were going towards the sky. They were coming down towards a single body. They start striking as much as possible to take the revenge from the heart of Imam al-Hussain. But Imam is watching and he's waiting and waiting and waiting for the last breath of Hazrat Ali Akbar. He shouts out, Assalamu alaikum يا أبتا هذا جدك رسول الله. Oh, my salam be upon you, oh Baba Jan. This is your grandfather, Nabi Rasulullah. He has quenched my thirst with the water that I had never tasted in my life. He conveys his salam and he says, we are waiting for you. The Maqdad says, Abba Abdullah attacked the army like a lion. Everybody pulled back. The dust settles down. They see Imam Hussain approaching the remaining body of Hazrat Ali Akbar. He drops down from the horse. As he's walking towards the body, he kneels down. It's the love of his life. He's walking on his knees towards the body of Hazrat Ali Akbar. After a couple of steps, he cannot tolerate it. As if he drops his body on the body of Hazrat Ali Akbar. The description of a maqtal, فَخَدَّأُوهُ عَلَىٰ خَدِّهِ. Imam places the right side of his face next to the face of Hazrat Ali Akbar in the form of a sajda, and there is a pitch silence within the godal of Qatlegah. The enemy starts to do harwala. They start saying congratulations and saying takbir to one another. Sayyida Zainab hears the takbir of the enemy from the Khaymegah. She rushes out, she runs towards the godal of Qatlegah. She knows that if Imam Hussain is left alone with Hazrat Ali Akbar, as if it will be the end of tragedy of Ashura, she runs to the rescue of Abu Abdullah. Imam Hussain shouting out, oh Waladi, Waladi, my son, my son. When he turns around and sees Sayyida Zainab, he gets up, he holds on to Sayyida Zainab as he's walking back towards the Khaymegah, calls out, oh the youth of Bani Hashim, oh the youth of Bani Hashim, come and fetch the body of your cousin Hazrat Ali Akbar. They say why Imam said the youth. Usually takes one or two people, because now a group of Bani Hashim, they come. They took two spears, they put a piece of curtain between the two, using it as a blanket, but not to take one body out. But each of the youth has to go and has to pick up a portion of the body of Hazrat Ali Akbar, placing on that blanket and taking it back to the Khaymegah of Shoda. But la yawm, ka yawmika ya Aba Abdullah, O Imam Hussain. Here at least you were able to place the right side of your cheek next to the right side of the face of your son. Oh Abu Abdullah, I know one more son, a few days after the day of Ashura, who comes to give you a proper burial in the land of Karbala. He asked for a piece of buriya. When they bring that piece of mat, they put the body of Abu Abdullah. Imam Sajjad goes inside of the grave. They hand him the buriya. They see that Imam Sajjad doesn't come out of the grave. The Bani Asad look inside. What do they see? They see Imam Sajjad giving the last kisses to the Karawayne of the neck of Abu Abdullah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. فسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بثناك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار وما جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Oh Allah, lastly, on the right of Abu Abdullah, on the right of Yahlul on the right of Quran. Oh Allah, hasten the appearance of our Imam of time, and inshallah grant every single one of us the bounty to be part of his companions.
Oh Allah will ask you for forgiveness upon all of us, upon all of our marhumin, especially with those who have sponsored the programs. Oh Allah will ask you to provide shifa, complete shifa, speedy shifa for all the mu'mineen who have come down with sicknesses, diseases, or facing difficulties in their life, answering their hawaij and requests. Oh Allah will ask you to accept this majalis on behalf of your mercy and make it a source of blessings upon the household, upon those who have sponsored the program, and extend the sawab and rewards of this majalis to the souls of our Aza Imam Hussain, especially from the group and the community. Oh Allah will ask you to grant all of us the bounty of the ziyarat of the Ahlul Bayt within our life, and inshallah the bounty of taking advantage of their shafa'ah and possession in this world and the next. Oh Allah will ask you to make all of us the guest of honor on the first night of our grave among the Ahlul Bayt and inshallah the teachers of the Quran. Let's remember marhumin, rahimallah man qara al-Fatiha ma'a as-salam.
Karbala शबीर की वो लाडली, शबीर की वो लाडली, सीने पे जो शाखे पली, सीने पे जो शाखे पली, जिसकी अबा रन में जली, जिसकी अबा रन में जली, मुँह पर तमाचों के निशान, मौला के मांगा हसन या हुसैन, मौला के मांगा हसन या हुसैन, या हुसैन, या हुसैन।
السلام عليك يا نبي رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين أيها الزين العابدين، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر، السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق، السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم، السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا، السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي أيها الجواد، السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد أيها الهادي، السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي أيها العسكري، السلام عليك يا مولانا ويا صاحب العصر والزمان، العجل العجل العجل، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك ونورك، واجعلنا جميعا خس أعوانك وشيعتك ومحبيك جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.